welcome back to Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I'm your host, Sean McKinda.
And I'm your host, Jackson Keller.
And I really regret telling you about that meme in my Discord. Because, wow, are you taking it to the next level?
It's really a test. Sooner or later, you're gonna get me, going even further beyond and trying to get, a 5-minute, Super Saiyan 3 axe and...
I was going to say, we're going to get the fucking passing out, aren't we? Because that's what the guy who went Super Saiyan 3 did, didn't he? He passed out?
I think he passed out during the Super Saiyan 4 transformation.
Okay, so let's not go that far.
Yeah, we'll keep it at 3.
But yeah, barring any more long acts, we're back with Spider-Man this week. We've got Into the Spider-Verse coming out in 2 weeks. So we decided to go back and watch some of the old Spider-Man movies. Jackson's been campaigning for this for a while now, and it felt like a good time to do it. So we watched the first 2 Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies.
Yes, I like Spider-Man. I like him quite a bit. I like the concept of Spider-Man. I like the sort of themes of Spider-Man, but the thing is that I haven't really read any Spider-Man comics, and I've seen all of the major Spider-Man movies, but I've only seen them once. So I haven't seen the Raimi movies since I was a kid, and I know that a lot of people online, like Film Crit Hulk and Movie Bob, are very critical of newer Spider-Man movies for sort of not measuring up to the first 2 Raimi films. And I've been curious just because, again, even though I like Spider-Man, strangely, it's one of those franchises that I have a fondness for that I haven't gone all deep dive into and rewatched and re-examined and stuff. So since we have this fine podcast here, I figured it was as good an opportunity as ever to revisit. So yeah,
I grew up really liking the Raimi Spider-Man movies. I don't know that I've seen them in the past decade either, so it's kind of cool for me to go back and watch them all again as well. I have always been a fan of them. I'm a huge fan of Raimi as a director in general, barring 1 or 2 missteps. Looking at you, Oz the Great and Powerful. But yeah, I really like Raimi as a director. I even liked the 3rd Spider-Man movie. I have not seen it in a while, and we're going to be talking about that next week, I promise. But for right now, we're going to talk about the good ones. We're
doing the hero side story of Spider-Man Adventure 2 Battle.
Exactly.
Next week is the dark side.
Yes, the very, very, very dark side. And we'll talk about that at the end. There's a lot to talk about with that. But yeah, no, I really like going back and watching these again. I've got a lot to say about how it was stylistically done. There's actually a lot of death theming in these movies, which is going to be nice for the death cast. I was actually a little worried, especially just given how modern Marvel movies kind of just gloss over death and don't really focus too much on it, that we'd kind of run into that situation again, and we'd spend more of the episode just making jokes and kind of commenting on, hey, it was really good, here's why, but not really diving into here's the death side of things. But I feel like we're actually going to have a pretty solid discussion based around the deaths present within these movies, because there's a surprising amount of it, and it's really handled within the movies. It's not just, yeah, he died, we're moving on.
A thing that doing this podcast has sort of made me realize is that if I can say a movie really focuses on death, that kind of means one thing, but the higher compliment I can give a movie is if I can say that it's about loss. And I don't mean loss as in Control-Alt-Delete loss. I don't mean the meme. I mean the very real human concept of emotional pain and loss and suffering, which I think these 2 movies in particular do very well. They were both a real treat to go back to, a real kind of classic superhero movie. Thinking about what we call kind of the modern superhero movies, they have a lot more in common with spy adventure movies, really. There isn't as much superheroing, and you can even see that within the MCU. If you go and watch some of the earlier movies, I rewatched Iron Man 1 pretty recently, and there's sort of a focus on him, like, redeeming himself, being a do-gooder, being a hero, that, you know, you don't really see in Infinity War, because it's more about the battles at this point and kind of the lore. So it's kind of refreshing going back and watching movies like this and, like, the Richard Donner Superman that are about just, like, one guy trying to protect a city and do the right thing and be faced with moral dilemmas and have
Honestly, Spider-Man 2 really even goes beyond just like, hey, this is more of a spy movie. It becomes way more of a personal drama even.
Yeah, like so I mean, here's really the amazing thing about the Amazing Spider-Man's a different thing altogether. But the amazing thing about the Raimi movies is, you know, we were kind of saying in our pre-discussion how they're both great, like, auteur, like, directors movies. Like, Sam Raimi is all over this. Like, you can, like, so many of his little stylistic ticks. I'm not even that familiar with most of his work, and even I can see it. Like, all the influences from, like, the Evil Dead and stuff coming in from there. Like, just, like, a sense of humor, the way the movie is lit. And that was another thing, too. Like, visually, even though the CGI has aged pretty poorly, like, the fight choreography, the staging, a lot of the effects, like, all felt really punchy and good and, like, really well staged, especially in the second one.
And you can see all of it, too. Like,
yeah,
you understand everything that's happening.
That's what I was gonna say. So, like, despite the CGI being, like, lower technical quality, being, like, early 2000s CGI, it's so much more, like, bright and, like, genuinely realistic. Like, that's what an actual city looks like. It doesn't always look like brown, drab, you know, war-torn battlefield, which a lot of modern action movies, superhero or not, tend to be. So the fact that it is, you know, and that just goes along with the fact that it's got such, like, a clear, you know, director, clear, you know, hand on the steering wheel, is really great in its own right. Like, I'm always for that. But the other thing that's really nice is that, it really captures, like, what the cultural essence of Spider-Man is. Like, you can show someone these two movies, and, like, you know, they may not know all the, like, history and the subtleties and sort of the changes that, like, the character's gone through with the comics. I know that they've done some pretty wacky things as of recent with, like, Doc Ock becoming Spider-Man and, you know, all this other stuff. But I feel like you can watch these movies and just really get the essence of the character. Like, they're a perfect distillation of Spider-Man as an idea, even if they're not, like, an exact adaptation of any particular story or particular, like, run.
Yeah, it feels so much like an actual comic book, I think, is what it really boils down to. Jackson was talking about them being compared to modern MCU and these being more like spy movies, and I mentioned personal dramas and whatnot. But I mean, even beyond that, they just feel like comic books. The modern MCU, and like, this isn't necessarily a dig against it. It's succeeded for reasons. It's still pretty solid. But it has more of a focus on lore, as Jackson was saying as well. There's more of a focus on the battles. There's not as much intimate moments of the characters kind of retrospectively trying to understand what's going on, trying to reason with themselves. Like, even Infinity War, the big reason that I was kind of disappointed in Infinity War is because Thanos is one of my all-time favorite villains, and he is just entirely introspective throughout the entirety of the Infinity War comic, and they kind of get rid of that for the movie, and it becomes much more about the spectacle of it. And these movies go back to that feeling of comic book introspection of, how do I handle these powers? I'm a teenager. What do I do with them? And, like, I watched my Uncle Ben die. How do I handle that? It's way more personal, and it is a comic book.
And the other thing that's cool is that, like, also, as far as tone, I know that's one of our big bingo words, especially for me. But the tone of these movies is really something else, because they're infamously kind of hokey and have, like, you know, really, like, 60s,
like a comic book.
Yeah, like really what you think of when you think of, like, comic book dialogue and, like, sense of humor and stuff. But the fact that, like, all that stuff is so earnest, like, it doesn't have, like, a smirk or an eye roll. Like, Spider-Man just has an extended conversation in an elevator about like his suit riding up in the crotch, and that's like probably the most like smirky, like self-aware that the movie gets, and even that feels somehow like weirdly genuine, just this sight of Spider-Man just riding in an elevator with this dude. Because
was that in Spider-Man 2 for you?
Yes.
Okay, I have to just mention this really quick. I actually watched Spider-Man 2.1, which is the extended cut. Because I got like the trilogy on Blu-ray or whatever. But in that scene, it was actually the guy was trying to pitch himself as essentially like a PR man for Spider-Man, trying to it wasn't about Spider-Man talking about the suit riding up, but he's like, hey, I work for this PR firm. Here's my card. Let's work on your brand identity. I can sell cologne for you and whatnot. And, like, it was a little bit more extended than the crotch riding up thing, but it felt just as intimate. Like, it still wasn't eye-rolling. It felt like something that would happen in a comic book.
Oh my god, that's amazing. Yeah, that's definitely not the version that I watched. I didn't realize that there was an extended cut.
It's so good. It's like 8 minutes longer, and this scene is wonderful. There is 30 seconds of it of just silence as they awkwardly try and deal with each other, and it is just magnificent.
No, that's amazing. And again, there's this weird sort of like nice intimacy. So like, again, it's probably the most like self-aware the movie gets, and it's still sincere. And so I just really appreciate about that, because somehow, despite the corniness of the Green Goblin being this Jekyll and Hyde Power Ranger who screams and Willem Dafoe is like, Spider-Man! Despite all of that, like, somehow it feels a lot more grounded and down to earth than, like, the supposedly, like, more grounded modern superhero movie. I like, it's weird.
It's personal is really what it boils down to again. As you were saying, like, Spider-Man and the Green Goblin knew each other. They are aware of each other's existence. It feels like a personal thing. It's not like Tony fighting Thanos, a guy that he knows next to nothing about.
Yeah, and what I really like about the Green Goblin, both the villains of these movies are good. I will say I was a little... I kind of wanted a little bit more out of Doc Ock, I think. I wanted...
Oh, I really like that he became kind of a background piece, actually.
See, I do... I like that, but I think more so than that, I don't think I need more time from him. I just wish that, like, it wasn't quite the same shtick again, is probably my main complaint with Doc Ock. Like, I like Alfred Molina's performance. I like the character, and especially, like, it makes for a lot of good, like, action scenes when they do fight. But what I would say is that, like, given that he's kind of the more sympathetic of the two, because Norman Osborn's really humanized, like, he's really fatherly to Peter, and that's really great, but, like, as far as, like, you know, why he's doing it, he's still just kind of like this arms dealer, like, out for, like, trying to, like, make his company, and you get him, and it's nice that he's not, like, a mustache twirling, like, corporate dude until he, like, gets his, like, split personality. I just kind of wish that they hadn't gone with the tentacles are sort of taking over my brain, I'm not quite myself angle again. Just because
it did feel like kind of a rehash of the first.
Yeah.
But as I said, it was a little bit more perfunctory in this one. It served more of a background to it. Like, they had to include it for reasons of superhero movie. And I wouldn't have been surprised, because, like, the third movie is infamous for having, it's just bad because the studio meddled with it, and, like, Raimi's like, fine, fuck you guys, I'm just gonna trash this movie, which I want to talk about a lot next week. I love that. But I'd be curious to know if maybe he wanted this to be a little bit more of a personal story again, and just kind of pull back from the superhero side of things, and maybe just have him beat up the occasional bad guy, live his life, go on as things are, and they're like, no, you have to have some sort of villain. And so they're like, all right, fine, we'll do Doc Ock, and we'll just kind of half-ass him in here to be the background to everything else going on.
Maybe. I mean, I could see that, but the thing is that despite sort of my complaint that he's kind of a bit of a retread, I think in his own right, like, he's still a pretty good villain. Like, he's not...
Oh, no, he's great.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that he lets him be a good villain is wonderful, but, like, there are just long swaths of this movie where he just totally disappears.
Yeah, and that's great, and that's amazing. And that's why this is, like, one of, like... I'd say probably one of the best movies in like the superhero canon, like ultimately.
Occasionally we get like that pan where it goes across a building and it gets dark and then it lights back up and he's building his thing and then it pans again and it gets dark and lights back up and it's great. That's all it is. And we're back to Spider-Man again, because it's not about Doc Ock, it's not about their fight, it's about Spider-Man.
Yeah. So I've heaped a lot of praise onto the Raimi Spider-Mans, and overall, like, they're definitely worth revisiting if you haven't. Especially like if you're like, I know that there are some. The movies kind of have a reputation now as being kind of the uncool ones. Like you know what I mean? Like, because they're corny and hokey and like.
Oh, that makes me sad.
I mean, it does, especially because it's not like, and it's not like Amazing Spider-Man 2 is well liked or anything, but like Amazing Spider-Man 1 still has some fans. Like, there's genuinely like a debate between people who like the Raimi one and who like the first one. And I like, again, I haven't seen it since it came out in theaters either, but I like the Amazing Spider-Man 1 as well.
Why would you watch it again? That came out last year.
Get the fuck out of here. What you made that exact same joke like 5 episodes ago, and I'm so mad about it.
Did I really?
It was longer than that, I think, but I was listening back to some stuff, and I'm pretty sure you made that exact same joke.
Fuck, I'm recycling jokes. I guess we got a year of life on this podcast. We have to wrap it up now.
And that's it. We've jumped the shark. We've danced in the nightclub. We put on the Venom suit. Good night, everybody.
That's it. That's it. We're done.
But no. So Amazing Spider-Man 1, like, I haven't seen that movie since it came out in the theaters. And I liked it for what it was, especially because I was in like the target audience when it came out, probably. But I think that if you are one of those people who's like, oh, Tobey Maguire is such like a doughy looking dweeb, like he wasn't a very good Spider-Man, like, come back to it a little, like, now that you're a little older, and like see what they're actually doing with the character, and you'll see that he's really good. He's a really good Spider-Man. He's a really good Peter Parker.
And I'm gonna say, that's what I'm gonna say, is that the Spider-Man movies up to this point have been Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, where he was not a great Spider-Man, but he was a wonderful Peter Parker, and as the series was about Peter Parker, it really worked. Andrew Garfield in Amazing Spider-Man 1 was not a great Peter Parker, but he was a really good Spider-Man. He got that quippiness down, the whole shtick was really solid, and then the new guy, Tom Holland, is really good at both of them, actually. I really like him as Spider-Man in general. But like, I totally see why people are not thrilled with Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man, because he's not a great Spider-Man. He's a great Peter Parker.
He is a great big doof, but that's what's great about him. And really, like, the only thing that I would say I don't like that the Amazing Spider-Man movies do better, is the love interest. And this is not a slam on Kirsten Dunst. She's a fine actress, does a good job. But Mary Jane sucks. she's boring, and she's kind of a bad person. And I don't know why, like, Peter finds her so desirable in the fact that she was the pretty girl next door in high school.
I mean, her whole arc is kind of weird throughout this, because she just kind of like ignores him. Oh, I'm in love with you now. And it felt very weird and rushed to me.
Yeah, and also just like, you know, I mean, I guess there's no reason to really. I mean, I guess this is. I guess we can't talk about Mary Jane without talking about spoilers. But these movies are old as fuck, and everyone knows what happens in them. So do we just want to call it so I can address this, so we can move on to more important things?
Yeah, it seems like a great place for spoilers.
Okay. Because the thing about Mary Jane, is that like her personality, I like, from what I understand of the comic, she's supposed to be like Peter's like feistier like girlfriend, because she's not like necessarily the only notable love interest, which is why they went with Gwen in the Amazing Spider-Man movies.
To say the least, there's about 300 of them.
Yeah, exactly. So, but like, you know, she's kind of the feisty one, like, go get him, Tiger, like the redhead, and that's cool and all, but we don't really see that from her in this. She's just kind of bland, and then when we do see her making decisions, it's like constantly like agreeing to like get in these like serious relationships while also still pining for Peter and or Spider-Man. And in the first movie, it's a little more understandable because Harry Osborn, like from the beginning, we see that he's kind of a tool and like he's not a great boyfriend. But like that poor astronaut guy, that poor J. Jonah Jameson Jr. in Spider-Man 2, like by all accounts, he's like a sweet, loving fiance, and Mary Jane keeps pining over Peter Parker and or Spider-Man, depending on the scene, which he doesn't know that they're different.
Yeah, like the scene where she tries to do the upside down kiss with JJJ Jr.
Yeah,
is like he's like, hey, I'm on the moon now. How about you? And like it's supposed to be really sweet, and she's like not feeling it. And like I kind of feel for the guy.
Yeah, and like she clearly, it's like she's clear, and there's so many times in the movie where like she's clearly just trying to make Peter jealous, and that feels like really shitty of her to do. I don't know, like, and then she
listen. 2002 was a weird time.
2002 was a weird time.
We also have the Asian woman on the street, which that was the most like 2002 was a weird time.
Yeah.
That was not great. That did not age well at all.
Yeah, 2002 was a weird time. Also, the final thing about Mary Jane that sucks. J. Jonah Jameson Jr. deserved better. She leaves him at the altar and gives one of the bridesmaids a note. What a dick move.
But J. Jonah Jameson himself is actually wonderful.
J. Jonah Jameson himself.
J.K. Simmons it was made to play JJJ.
It's honestly like he feels like he's in a completely different movie, but not in a bad way. Like he's amazing. Like every scene he's in, I'm just completely transfixed.
It's so good. Like the scene where he's dressed up as Spider-Man and they're watching him. God, I was dying. You got that, right? Did you not have that scene?
Wait, in the second one?
Yeah!
Oh my god, no, I didn't. No, wait!
When JJJ gets the suit, there's a quick scene of him dressed up as Spider-Man on his desk going, thwip, 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 haha, gotcha, thwip, thwip. And the people in the office are looking in on him like, what the fuck is he doing?
I feel like I would have to remember this. I don't remember this. I would like.
It was the greatest fucking scene in the movie.
I laugh because that sounds amazing, but I don't remember seeing it. Fuck, I'm gonna have to look it up on YouTube.
No, seriously, the 2.1 cut is apparently wonderful. I did not realize how much better it was. Holy shit.
Yeah, no kidding. God, all right. Well, fuck me.
J. Jonah Jameson was great. The casting in this movie generally is really good. I guess we'll get to death eventually, don't worry. But I have to rag on him. I do not like James Franco at all. He did not endear himself to me in Future World, and I'm not saying that's the first movie I saw him in, but like it's the relevant movie to this podcast. And he continues to suck a lot in this one. I do not like him at all.
I mean, James Franco's not a great actor. I think he's fine. I think just the fact that I know that James Franco is a tool, and the fact that Harry Osborn is kind of supposed to be a tool, like, that it just creates that association in my mind. But you are right in that he only has, like, two faces. He's got, like, neutral eyebrows, mouth slightly agape look, and then he's got, like, shit-eating grin, slimy businessman look. Yeah. No,
I have to say, though, just as a quick aside, though, too, did you catch that both Joel McHale and Octavia Spencer are in these fucking movies?
I did, and, like, I thought it was them. Actually, no, I didn't think it was them. Like, I saw Octavia Spencer, and I was like, you look really familiar. You really look like Octavia Spencer, but I'm not sure if that's you. And then I looked it up later, and it was. And then Joel McHale, I couldn't put my finger on. I'm like, you also look really familiar, but I can't put my finger on it. And then later I saw it, I'm like, oh my god, it was!
The casting, like, going back and watching it now, you recognize tons of people, and it's nuts. I didn't even realize that it was fucking Macho Man Randy Savage was the Bonesaw or whatever.
Oh my god, that's incredible!
Yeah, the cast is great. It's so good.
So these movies are great, and not only are they, like, genuinely fun and hopeful and all the good things that a superhero movie should be. They're also really fucking sad and powerful and deal with loss in a really real-ass way. And which,
haha, segue.
Yeah, and so let's talk about Uncle Ben, because I feel like the fact that Spider-Man has had so many iterations in film now, which, like, is pretty uncommon. Like, mostly there's one version of, like, Wolverine that we know. There's one version of, like, Iron Man. The only other characters that have really had as many iterations as Spider-Man has are Superman and Batman, who are, like, old as fuck.
The DCU is managed like a bunch of morons.
Exactly. And so I feel like Uncle Ben is just treated as such, like, a meme character now, that of course he's there to die to motivate Spider-Man, and, like, that is his purpose. That is. But, like, Uncle Ben is in the first Spider-Man movie for, like, 10 minutes. He doesn't really have that much screen time, and for what screen time that he has, like, he does a really good job conveying, like, what the relationship with Peter is, and, like, the fact that they have that little argument in the car. Like, one of the things that I love about the first movie, that I think it has a sort of a unique virtue over the second one, is that it really, in that first half, does a stupendous job of capturing what being, like, an awkward, like, kind of shitty, like, selfish teen boy is. That he literally is only doing this stuff. He's only doing this wrestling to buy a car to impress a girl. He's ditching out on his chores. He's getting into fights with his uncle. He's, sneaking away. He's doing all this, like,
the most teen boy shit imaginable.
It's the most teen boy shit imaginable in such, like, an archetypal way, but, like, the way that he, like, lets his anger get the best of him, the specific ways that, like, Peter acts in particular scenes. It's hard for me to put my finger on, but it feels very... Because early in the movie, I was kind of worried, like, in the scene where he gets bit by the spider, that, like, he, as a nerd, he was acting a bit too caricatured, like, oh, well, like, hey guys, I'm Jason Fenderburger. Like that was kind of the vibe I was getting from Tobey Maguire, like, that first scene. Was like, oh no, like, ooh, I know the movies are kind of broad and campy, but I don't know how much I'm going to be able to tolerate this. But after that, and, like, it starts diving into his character motivations, and there's a real, like, genuine source of anger, like, feeling of anger and frustration, but not in a, because one of the things about the Amazing movies is that, like, kind of the angstiness is really played up and really obvious. Like, he like, Andrew Garfield, Peter Parker.
The Amazing movies, they get back at his bullies in, like, 30 seconds.
Yeah. And so, like the first movie just does a really good job of, and I think the difference between Andrew Garfield, Peter Parker, and Tobey Maguire Peter Parker is that Andrew Garfield Peter Parker always feels angry. Like, he feels angry all the time. And that's how a lot of teen boys are presented in, like, media, especially if they have kind of this, like, supposed to have this darker streak. But the thing about Tobey Maguire is that you can tell that he's a nice kid. Like, he's still got, like, a lot of sweet moments, and he's nice to his aunt and uncle, even if he's a little bit distant.
And, like, even under the anger, you can kind of feel the sadness to it, too.
Yeah, like, it feels so much more like lashing out, which is what that experience of being a teenager is more like, instead of just being constantly like, grrr, and so when the fact that, he has that fight with Uncle Ben and even throws in his face, like, well, you're not my father, so, fucking stop. That's the last scene we get. That's super fucking sad. I cried in these movies. I cried in both of them.
Yeah, it definitely, it kind of takes you with a little bit of a gut punch. I'm going to confess something. I was incredibly tired through the first one. I still really enjoyed it, but, like, I feel like I was not caught up in the emotional investment of it as much. So whoops on that one. but
I mean, it happens. Like we'll be like sometimes the surrounding environment will like keep you from feeling the full impact or something. But so like I guess just like thinking about Uncle Ben is that like even though his actual relationship with Peter is so short, like the guilt that he feels. And I don't want to diss Spider-Man Homecoming too much. I know that my immediate reaction after watching these Raimi movies is like soul, like, oh my god, these movies have so much soul, and the Marvel movies are all like soulless. Again, I haven't seen Homecoming since it came out in theaters and did really enjoy it. But one of the things I think that sort of perpetuates this Uncle Ben meme is like the fact that like Uncle Ben is just sort of this meme character, is that in that movie they only say his name like once, I think, and that like in Civil War Peter only gives like one speech like hinting at this being his motivation. But in Homecoming it feels very much like, hey Tony, you're my new dad now, just like all the way. And like that's a different interpretation of the character, sure, but like the fact that, and I say that, but there's kind of that going on in the first movie too, with Norman Osborn kind of being very fatherly to Peter and like, you know, outright saying it in sort of their final confrontation. But it's a lot more explicit when you have like Uncle Ben as, you know, this father that Peter no longer has, and that, you know, he is, you know, in a lot of ways personally responsible for. Again, it's so... Spider-Man's origin story is one of those things that is such a trope. It's like the thing that everyone knows. Uncle Ben dies because Peter lets the guy go. So you feel like it shouldn't have any real emotional impact. But the thing is that...
It's a trope because it worked.
Because it worked. And like, and the thing
because this set it up to work.
They set it up to work, and not only did they set it up, but, you know, the reason I say that I cried at both of these movies is that they didn't just leave it alone. Like, in the first, like, this is one thing about The Amazing Spider-Man 2, is that I also think they handled, that was my favorite thing about The Amazing Spider-Man 1, was Martin Sheen as Uncle Ben. I thought they handled that pretty well. Probably not as well as the Raimi movies, but, like, as far as I can remember, I think they gave it due respect. But then in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, who cares? We got another dad. You're my dad now, Spy Dad. You're my real dad. And
it doesn't echo is what it boils down to. Like, this is a thing that constantly comes back. It's constantly looming. It never really goes away. You always have that specter of Ben kind of saying, with great power comes great responsibility. That's the whole feature of the second movie. It's not even just like mentioned, it is the core piece. It's what the whole movie is based off and built around, is this question of who does Peter want to be? Should he live up to the expectations that Ben has set, or does he want to go off and do his own thing? And so it's not just swept under the rug of, oh yeah, go be Spider-Man, don't really think anymore about this, I died, bye, and is much more long-lasting and long-term.
I mean, yeah, like I said, I cried during both these movies, and that scene where Peter, you know, like, he comes back, like, he doesn't actually come back, but like, it's dramatized literally as Peter having a conversation with Ben, you know, sitting there in that fateful moment in the car with him, like the last time he saw him. And you know, that, you know, some people might say it's really hokey and over the top and on the nose, but it really fucking works. You know, Peter, like, straight up tells him that, like, he's crying and I can't, you know, live with the, you know, with the burden of, like, expectation, like, you're gone now, I've got to be my own man. And that shit's fucking heartbreaking, especially since he's still grappling with the survivor's guilt.
And fun fact, the car that they use in the Spider-Man movies that Uncle Ben drives is the same car from Evil Dead.
Oh, Sam!
Just need to mention that.
Oh, Sam Raimi! Even in your dramatic moments, you got to put in your little jokes and memes and inside.
You gotta have Bruce Willis in there somewhere. Or fuck! You gotta have Bruce Campbell in there somewhere.
Oh,
I got there.
Oh, speaking of that, I don't remember where Bruce Campbell was in the first one.
He was the announcer.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Because I was like, is that? I'm pretty sure that's him. But it's so weird seeing Stan Lee cameos that are subdued and like actual cameos.
Yes. Yeah, I thought about that too, actually. And like I feel kind of bad because, as I said, we've been ragging on him for a while, and I do genuinely still really like Stan Lee. We give him a lot of shit on this podcast for the things that he's shown up for and just like interrupted the flow of a movie to have it happen. But like it is genuinely a really sad thing that he's gone, and as much as I did not like those cameos, I am going to come to a point where I'm going to miss them. But it is really refreshing in these movies where Stan Lee's just like a guy who pulls a woman out of the way of the car, and they don't mention it. That's it.
Yeah, but we can still so clearly tell that it's him. I mean, I guess that's because that he had so much more like forward-facing cameos in newer Marvel movies. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Because the other thing that's great about Uncle Ben in these movies and Peter's relationship with him and like, you know, continually struggling with that guilt. And I love that it's not something that gets resolved. And I love how in the first movie, and this is maybe the key difference between the like whole ethos of Spider-Man versus the Amazing Spider-Man, is that at the end of the first movie ends on kind of a dour note where like he gets his chance at MJ finally, and he has his little character development moment where he's like, sorry, like I can't, like it's you know, like I just, after all that's happened, like I can't, you know, deal with it. But, you know, versus the end of the Amazing Spider-Man, where it's just like, nah, like screw your cop dad's last wishes, like I'm gonna get with you, Emma Stone.
Oh my god, yeah, with like there was like Ghost Cop Dad at the end of that, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was. And
they try and actually, that's interesting because they try and have that echo through the second one, because Ghost Cop Dad comes back in the second one and kind of guilts him a little bit. It's just way less effective.
It's way less effective. Because he's not his dad.
And it's just kind of goofy and weird. It just kind of feels like an overbearing father for her, but like not actually a father figure for him in any way, shape, or form.
It feels more like Ghost Dad in Amazing Spider-Man 2. I mean, I guess we'll talk about this when we get there. I'm like going off what I remember. It's more like Ghost Dad in Amazing Spider-Man 2 is like, not my daughter. Like,
yeah, it's way weird in Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah. But, you know, we only get that one scene where we directly see Uncle Ben. Otherwise, it's just like, again, like really realistic little moments where someone who like doesn't know what he's feeling, who doesn't know the whole situation, will just say something that like makes him feel like dread in his heart and like really like starts tormenting him, like and it can be just an innocuous little comment like oh, like, you know, like wouldn't it be nice if, you know, Ben were here to like have tea with us. And that's what prompts my other favorite scene in the whole thing, is when Peter finally breaks down and confesses to Aunt May. And I really love her reaction. I really love Aunt May as a character because she is such like a sweet, nice old lady, but like she still gets a lot of like humanizing moments. She's still a grieving widow. And the fact that she is not just sad at what Peter's telling her, but like legitimately angry, like can't bear to look at him. But, you know, I really like that scene. I really like that reaction, but I also like that it's not something that she continues to hold against him for the rest of the movie. Like, it's like you can accuse them of like kind of pushing it to the side, but she still loves him. She's still like, he's still basically her son, and like that's a really complicated feeling. But she also knows that like, because the other complicated thing with sort of going over this grief is that even though like, yes, like Peter could have stopped the mugger, it's not like he pulled the trigger, you know? So like it's this big whole like swirl of complicated feelings, and you know, she's just got to continue like loving her nephew, loving, you know, her son basically, and you know, they're gonna keep on going, and it's gonna be great, and it's an emotional little thing in this family film, and that handles loss more realistically than any superhero film, like bare minimum. And most other like big budget like AAA tentpole films.
And beyond that, the loss of Norman Osborn impacts Harry Osborn in the same way the loss of Ben impacted Peter. And I think it's really kind of cool how this echoes throughout the movie, in that Peter does kind of kill the guy who killed Ben. Like, he just doesn't save him. And he falls out the window and he's dead. Like, he dropped a bunch of stories and laid there pretty catterwampus on the pavement, right? Like,
yeah, I like that was definitely the implication, like that, the fact that he wasn't moving.
But later on in Spider-Man 2, Henry, who the fuck is Henry? Harry asks Peter, like, if you could kill the man who killed your uncle, wouldn't you want the knowledge to be able to do that? And I'm like, that's dark. That's really interesting, because it does play on the idea that you remember that Peter did kill the man who killed his uncle. And so it kind of reinforces Harry's urge to kill Spider-Man, and this understanding that he has an earnest wish, I guess, in his eyes. I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting mirror or an interesting parallel in their lives.
And another thing about that moment that really stuck out to me is that the way that, having this conversation, I'm like, there are so many things, small things in the first one that I'm taking for granted that I love even more. That I think, the common wisdom is that Spider-Man 2 is the better one, and I think in filmmaking terms, it definitely is. But there's so much good shit in the first one. They're both so really great. That one of the things that I love about just the way that's framed is that in the shot of him like falling out the window, we see him like not moving still, presumably dead. But like, we know even just from Peter's face that like it wasn't satisfying. It didn't fix anything. Like, Uncle Ben still wasn't there for his graduation, and they still like broke down in tears. And what brings that up in the second movie, like when Harry asks him about that, it's such an interesting moment for Peter, just because he clearly like identifies with that impulse because he's done it and knows what Harry is feeling, but also knows that Harry doesn't know the whole story, and that even if Harry got what he wanted, independent of the fact that he is Spider-Man and like, it had to be done, is that like, it's still, it doesn't bring him back. It doesn't fix anything. Like, that's such a that's such a revenge trope, but it's so true. Loss is loss. It's just gonna be a big gaping hole, no matter how much Spider-Manning you do to fill it.
And I mean, even the fact that they killed Norman Osborn is so fucking crazy. Like, it's movie 1 of a new Spider-Man series, and they end with the death of a second father figure to Peter. It's not like, oh, we're going to put him in jail and hope he rehabilitates. It's not, because I mean, it could have just been as easy of Harry Osborn to be like, I'm angry at Spider-Man because he put my dad in jail.
Yeah.
But no, it wouldn't have the same punch. So they're like, we have to kill Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin. And knowing full well that they have the greatest Green Goblin they're ever going to get.
Oh, yes, they do. Oh, God bless
And they
you.
still they don't pull any punches. They're still like, no, he died here. He is dead. He is not coming back. And it is just an impressively ballsy move that I expect from Sam Raimi in a lot of ways, because Sam Raimi, I don't feel is the type of dude who would pull punches. He's got a story he wants to tell.
No, he really doesn't pull punches, and like the great thing about Sam Raimi, this is why, like, now that I've seen these two again, I'm really interested to go back to Spider-Man 3, because I too liked Spider-Man 3 when I first saw it, and it was the only time that I saw it, and didn't even realize that people had a problem with it.
No, me either.
Yeah. But, I mean, to be fair, we were, like, 12 years old when that movie came out.
Or wait. I feel like I might have not liked Spider-Man 3, actually. I feel like I might have thought something about it. I don't remember. I'm conflicted now, because I feel like part of me wants to say that I remember being like, It wasn't as good as the other two, but I still liked it.
I think that's how I felt, generally speaking. But one thing I'll say, like, given that Spider-Man 3's got a pretty vocal contingent of defenders, is that it definitely feels like Raimi is going out of his way to, like, not do the fan service thing. Like, we're gonna have the black suit, we're gonna have Venom, but not in the way that maybe you want or expect. And really, after watching, God, Venom is just so... I see why he revolted against the director's impulse, like, just without even having seen the movie, because Venom is so not Sam Raimi's aesthetic.
Oh, yeah. No, and like let's you know what? We're getting close to wrapping at this point. I want to give a little bit of a pre-discussion for next week, just because I do want to talk about like the making of Spider-Man 3 and my understanding of the story of how it happened. Because watching these two movies, Raimi clearly had such a desire for a trilogy. He wanted the first movie to be Norman Osborn setting up the Peter-Harry schism. The second one was going to be Peter finding himself and understanding how his responsibilities work. And then the third one was going to be the resolution of the Harry-Peter... Wow, that is a very unfortunate combination of words. Harry-Peter storyline. And so like it's clearly meant to be a trilogy, a very self-contained trilogy. And so rumor, I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but like seeing these two, I can't imagine it being anything other than 100% true. Is that like the studio said, no, you're going to put Venom in here, and I think they said you're going to put Sandman in too. I could see Sandman kind of playing the same role as Doc Ock in this movie, though, where he's just kind of more of a background villain sent to catalyze everything else. So I know Sam Raimi basically just said, no, fuck you guys, I don't want to do this. And they're like, no, you're going to do this, or we're going to take the project from you. And I think he wanted to finish the project, so he gritted his teeth, bared it, and still said fuck you and made a bad movie. Because he knowingly tanked it. That I know is for sure. He knowingly went through and tanked Spider-Man 3 because he disagreed with how it was being handled. So I'm really excited to watch this again. I have mad respect for doing that, because like it still made the money back. The studio couldn't have been too unhappy with him. But it was enough to stop another Spider-Man movie from being made. And that's a fucking ballsy move. Well, another Raimi Spider-Man.
I was gonna say maybe like I could see nothing but a tragedy here. Like, imagine the world where like we got Sam Raimi's like vision for the conclusion of the trilogy, and like imagine how different things would look. Like,
I mean, maybe, but at the same time, like that's supposing that the studio didn't interfere in any way. Like at that point, things would be wildly different, and I'd be so on board.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like the studio was going to force him to put Venom in either way, and I don't think Venom would have worked with his aesthetic in any way either way, as you were saying.
Well,
so I
yes.
think that this is probably the best outcome of Spider-Man 3. Like, I think he was done. He wanted to end the trilogy.
Yeah,
he doesn't feel like a director that would just continue to make something because it's profitable.
No. That, like, what I mean precisely is if the like studio hadn't been so boneheaded and like killed the golden goose, because like
yeah,
because Spider-Man 1 and 2 were like legit iconic, like full blown like phenomenon movies, like that upside down kiss scene, like just like again like one of the most iconic scenes in like all the movies, and the like train scene, Doc Ock, all these great moments. And honestly, like thinking about it, you know, talking about all these great movies between them, we've kind of been going back and forth, and that's sort of what I love about both of them, is how Spider-Man 2 is just such a natural extension of Spider-Man 1 that it feels like the classic like new Hollywood like conception of sequels. Like, it's not The Godfather 2, it's The Godfather Part 2. It's not Spider-Man 2, it's Spider-Man Part 2, just because the movies are so tight and thematically cohesive and aesthetically cohesive that it's hard to imagine them as anything other than like a perfectly bonded pair, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Which is why I think like had they let him do the trilogy, this could have been like up there in the Godfather echelon of trilogies.
Well, isn't that interesting? How like they're like as far as trilogies go, like. Is there an instance where 3 is really well regarded? I feel like it's almost always divisive.
Lord of the Rings, right?
Lord of the Rings, that's true. Because yeah, Lord of the Rings is probably the best example, and maybe Lord of the Rings. It might also be different for novels too. I don't know why.
I mean, for sure. But.
Because I know, like, I love Return of the Jedi. Like, Return of the Jedi is probably my favorite Star Wars movie, actually. But even it is pretty divisive, and that's one of like the better like trilogy cappers considered as such.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm just once again we're totally in theory crafting world right here. So, perfect world. This would have been up there with the Lord of the Rings and the Star Wars of good endings of trilogies. Instead, it does fall on the rather poor ending of trilogies, but I still like it from what I remember, and I'm going to find out if I actually do next week.
I'm really interested to go back to this one, and I guess while we're projecting ahead, I just want to like get this off my chest and get this on the table, because again, like I've always had a fondness for Spider-Man, but it was a very surface level fondness. So like I think I'm the only person in the world who enjoyed Amazing Spider-Man 2 when it came out. Like something about it just like tickled me, and I'm just wondering like if I am a moron, like if I just sat in the movie and saw like Andrew Garfield like kiss Emma Stone and swing around and be like, "Durr, this is fun," and so like just completely excuse the fact that it's a trash heap. So I'm not like curious because I know it's going to be bad. But like I'm embarrassed. I feel like I'm paying penance going back to Amazing Spider-Man 2 next week.
So, I mean, if it's not totally clear from what we've been talking about, we are doing both Spider-Man 3 and Amazing Spider-Man 2 next week, which should be a payoff, because I think I've been promising we talk about Amazing Spider-Man 2 for a while, because that is the movie that I was so mad at I almost walked out. That is my, like, mad movie. I hated that movie. I have not seen it in a very long time, so I'm curious if my emotions will temper a little bit, but like I'm just kind of thinking about it right now, and I don't know how much it's gonna temper. Fuck the planes.
Yeah, no, I'm very curious to go back to Spider-Man 3 as well, but I wait with bated breath for Amazing Spider-Man 2. Amazing Spider-Man 1 we're not gonna bother, just because it's
there's no point.
It's basically just like the first one, but not as good.
And their parents are spies in this one. For some reason, it's never really elaborated on. You don't need to know anything about that. There you go. You're caught up on Amazing Spider-Man 1.
Uncle Ben dies.
Oh, and we talked about Gwen Stacy's ghost dad. So,
there's a lizard. He tries to turn everyone else into lizards.
Which there's actually a lizard in the Raimi Spider-Man too.
I noticed that, and there's actually it seemed like there's a lot of cute little callbacks like that like he didn't even necessarily intend to like make a full movie out of, but like he could have if he wanted.
Yeah, and the first one he says he gets fired by like not Oscorp, but he gets fired by one of the other villains. I think he gets fired by Connors or Octavius or something. He got fired by somebody.
It is Connors, I think.
Okay, yeah, so he gets fired by Connors and then comes back and ends up being his student. Which, I mean, I feel like the first one was just like, if we get another one, great. If not, we're just going to throw in this cute little reference.
Yeah.
Moving on. So, like, there's a bunch of cute little Spider-Man references that I really, really like, but I don't know. That was that. We kind of sidetracked from the fact that nothing happens in the first Amazing Spider-Man movie.
From what I can remember, it's serviceable enough. I will say, like, I sort of got sidetracked earlier when I was talking about like why I don't like MJ. But I think even in the Amazing Spider-Man 2, the one great defense I have of those movies is that Gwen Stacy is, at least in like the movie versions, comparing them, is better than Mary Jane in every way.
That's the one thing I will give you, because everyone was talking about like, Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield had a great character relation going on. Sure, fine. I still fucking hated it. That was not enough for me to excuse it at the time. We'll see how it goes this time. See if it's any better. I'm very curious.
Honestly, I had such such a mad, like, celebrity crush on Emma Stone, because that would have come out, like, what? Like, when we were, like, sophomores in college or something? Yeah, like, I had a mad celebrity crush on Emma Stone, so that probably made me more kind to Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, so tune in next week for us to do our battle of the worst, I guess. Fuck, that's copyright, isn't it? That's just fucking Red Letter Media.
They do best of the worst, not battle of the worst. So really, we're like the Asylum production to their Hollywood studios. We're the future world of Red Letter Media.
Fuck. I've been Sean McKinney. You can find me on Twitter at Sean_McKenna. Also, my website, isortof.com. And I also do Twitch streams at twitch.tv/helpus_Skippy. Jackson was with me last week. The VOD is still up if you want to go watch that. We played Sonic 06 for 6 hours. It was a thing that we did. This Thursday, I'm actually going to promote this as well. If you are listening to this the day it comes out, I did hit a milestone on Twitch. So I'm going to be playing the terrible, terrible Tony Hawk Ride game at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you want to come hang out for that, it's a thing that you can do. It's gonna be bad, but you can do it.
I'll be there. You won't hear my annoying voice like you did during the Sonic 06 stream, which you should watch if you haven't. It was a great time. And this will be a great time too. You can watch Sean do an Adam West impression as he surfs. I've been Jackson Keller. You can find me on Twitter at JacksonJKeller. And I've been hinting at things coming together for y'all to enjoy, and we're not quite ready yet, but I'm gonna keep hyping it up because we're getting closer and closer when I'm gonna be able to announce exactly what I've been plotting behind the scenes here. So stay tuned.
Get ready. As always, thanks to Lords of Highway for the use of our theme song. It is Suicide, alternate take off the album High Octane Low Expectations. They're on Spotify and a bunch of other places. Go hunt them down. They're an awesome band, and they're very cool for letting us use their stuff. Also, shouts to 25 Years Later Site.com for hosting this podcast. They've got a bunch of really great content on their sites, all about like cult movies, things that are coming out. They're talking about Shudder a lot recently, which is the new horror streaming service. So go check that out. This is, you know what? I like that we've come up with this metric system of, are we ashamed of putting this episode on their site? And this time, no, I'm pretty happy with this episode. I think
it's a pretty good metric because like you can basically look at the title of any given episode and know whether we're degenerates for having put it on that site. And it's very easy to tell because usually it's the ones where we actually talk about death that we're not ashamed of.
Yeah, and like actually have content and don't just quote the song from Venom for 30 minutes and then argue about Full House. Yeah, that was an episode we put up on their site. Sorry, guys. As we said, next week we're going to be talking about Amazing Spider-Man 2 versus Spider-Man 3. So come back for that one. That should be a very interesting episode, to say the least.
Spider-Man 2.8 Dream Drop Distance Final Mix.
What the fuck did you just say?
Because I was doing a meme, because there were a lot of numbers there. There's Spider-Man 2, there's Amazing Spider-Man 2 versus Spider-Man 3, Spider-Man to the Fourth Power, and you know how like Kingdom Hearts has all those stupid Kingdom Hearts 3.5 Birth by Sleep of Memories, the last cut. I was doing a thing.
Listen, I got what you were doing. What the fuck did you just say?
Please send help.
Bye.